Oh, hey, I heard you wanted to major in game design. Well, here's the question to ask yourself. Are you fucking stupid? Oh, you called my name next to her critique? Crazy. Listen, I haven't slept in 48 hours. And in fact, last night, I was in the labs for 12 hours straight, rendering on 17 different computers, each one taking about, like an hour per frame. So, if this didn't turn out that great, well, don't blame me that you put me in animation VFX class for high poly modeling when I'm a game design student, which uses low poly in engine rendering. But anyway, here you go. Looks pretty good, huh? I worked really hard on this one. And in fact, I was ready to end my life about 3 separate times in the last 20 minutes alone, even just thinking of it. So, what grade am I gonna get? Oh, a C minus. Oh, you shouldn't have. What is game design? Well, it's not getting a degree in gaming, let me tell you that. If you are a person who is trying to go to college and trying to figure out what to major in, and you're like, oh, hey, I don't really do anything but play video games all day, that's not enough of a reason to major in this. Game design is an art-focused, game-specific degree, but this is game production, not just like, I'm gonna play games for a living. No, you're either a YouTuber, streamer, or a QA tester if you're playing video games for a living. What we do in game design and in the industry is basically pour hours and hours of labor into what may or may not actually be put in the game, that may or may not actually come out and may or may not actually make money. Unless, of course, you work AAA, then you're spending 60 plus hours a week just sculpting the individual pores on Nathan Drake's face, or maybe trying to figure out the realistic physics for horse balls in Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, if that sounds interesting to you, then continue on. If it doesn't, well then I would like you to consider deeply what it is that you actually want out of your game design degree. Obviously, I'm using hyperbole and exaggerating, and that's not really at all what we do in my major, but you just have to understand that game design and working in games is not the same thing as playing games, and you're probably going to be playing way less games than you think you are, and if you end up making games that you would normally want to play, then you're probably not going to want to play them because you spend all your time making and breaking them. So just keep that in mind. Now, if you still have a passion for making games for some reason, and you really are set on being part of the creative process, and you view games as an art form, or maybe just a means to an end, I guess as a money-making tool, which is kind of sus, but I mean, then yeah. If you're going into it as a business or as an art, then yeah, maybe game design is right for you. But is it game design that you want? You have to consider what it is that you're actually trying to do once you're in games. So like, for example, if you just want to do concept art, and you know right off the bat you just want to do concept art, major in illustration. Don't waste your time in game design if you know that what you're trying to do is art focused. If you know that you want to do 3D models and only 3D models, then don't major in game design, major in like animation, 3D animation VFX, something like that, not game design. If you want to do coding, back-end technical work, major in computer science or computer programming, not in game design. Now, if you know you want to work in games, but you don't know exactly what you want to do, well then I think I found the degree for you. Game design as a degree, or like it used to be called game art and production at my school, or it could just be called game art, or maybe just game production. If it's a general degree with the nondescript word game in it, then it's probably what I'm talking about when I refer to game design, even though, it's such a new major, it hasn't been standardized anywhere, and it's going to be different pretty much every school you go to. They all have a different program. But basically, nondescript game design as a major is the generalist, I like video games, I want to make video games degree. It's like if you ever had a class in school, like in middle school, we had something called the wheel, where they'd force sixth graders to take random different electives that change throughout the year instead of taking one for the whole year, so that they could get a taste of different interests. And that's basically the game design degree. Our base core curriculum is 3D modeling or basic introductions to working in engine, but the vast majority of our time, at least in the first half, for sure, is just figuring out what you like. The game design degree, as I know it, is kind of like the perfect way to educate yourself to running an indie studio, so that you know how to do a little bit of everything, and you're not really a master at anything, but you kind of know some stuff, I guess. Like, for example, I'm done with my sophomore year, going into basically junior year. It's a little more complex than that at my school, but 2 years in, and all I really have in terms of an actual game-specific education is 3D modeling in Maya, and that's about it. They tried to teach me Unity. I didn't figure it out from them, and they also tried to teach Photoshop, but I knew that before going in. So basically all I've gained in 2 years is a fundamental understanding of Maya. At my first job in the industry, I learned Blender because Maya is not practical, but that's a story for another day. Basically, what you're doing is a little bit of everything, trying to figure out what you actually want to do, if it is that you even want to specialize. So once again, if you have a specific goal on what your job in the industry will be, then major in that. Don't major in game design, major in that specifically. And honestly, you don't even need to major in a lot of stuff that they teach us in game design. Most industry professionals right now do not have a game-specific degree. And in fact, there's way more people trying to pursue game-specific degrees than there are jobs in the industry. So in a lot of cases, you might actually be better off just going to maybe trade school or take specific classes, or maybe even just teach yourself a lot of specific programs for the industry, build a portfolio for a year, and you're probably going to be better off than most game design students by the time they graduate, which is kind of unfortunate because we're paying a very premium price at the mere chance of being hired. So just know that this degree is also, despite being not at all specific or very helpful, it's very job focused. We're very interested, especially in my school, in making sure that you get a job when you're done. And I guess that's kind of the point of most degrees at this point in American capitalism. But anyway, I'm not gonna let my communist show. Even with all this trash talk, you might be thinking, well then what's the point? Why are you still in the degree? Why are you still majoring in game design if it seems so non-specific, so general, and frankly, like, it doesn't seem like you're learning much directly it's not a lot of bang for your buck. Well, I'm gonna argue that the reason that game design is really helpful in a lot of ways is that not only are you still getting the collegiate experience that many Americans think is essential to your character growth or whatever, you're getting a lot of experience in a lot of skills that maybe some people who don't have the well-rounded education or whatever are definitely not going to have. Game design is really, really broad, but game designers have to know a lot more stuff than you might think. The point of taking stuff like mathematics and history and psychology and cinematography and fine art principles and all that junk that they make us take is because really, if you want to be useful in your given job, you're going to want to know more than just how to code. Anybody can code. Anybody can learn how to use a 3D modeling software. But the appeal of majoring in game design is knowing those design principles that make your work stand out. And also portfolio building. The games industry is very portfolio specific and very like, if you don't have a portfolio, then you're not going to get hired anywhere. So it's portfolio assistance and also trying to educate you on artistic principles or even technical principles that maybe some people who don't have the education would not have. So it's not like completely useless. And even though they teach us in some softwares that maybe aren't always used because every studio is different, a lot of the principles of the software that they do teach us is carried over. Like I said earlier that they've been teaching me how to use Maya for 2 years, even though it's not practical for the industry. Well, given my 2 years experience with Maya, when I got a job that said use Blender instead, which I had never used, it wasn't really that difficult to jump from one program to the other. Because, honestly, 3D modeling one place is going to be fundamentally the same in any other software. The only difference is hotkeys and how often it crashes. Okay, and then there's also like this whole other issue that some people might be thinking about when deciding whether or not to major in game design is, what is the social life like? Well, obviously I can't speak for every single college in the country or the world, clearly. And like I said earlier, game design is so unstandardized that it's really hard to speak for everybody who's going to major in it in any aspect. But I'm going to say socially, at least in my case, the social life is probably one of the best parts of my major.
I can't wake up! Wake me up beside! Save me!
Game design is going to attract a certain kind of person, right? Because who is going to be so deranged that they're going to spend 4 or more years of their life learning how to make video games? Especially who's going to stick through, right? Because you might be thinking going in, like, oh, well, I guess I'll make video games. Like, to stick through, you really have to have a certain amount of passion and drive for the craft. So these people are kind of nuts. Different schools have different reputations in terms of, like, what kind of people go to the schools. Like, if you go to Santa Cruz, for example, they all do drugs and are gay. And if you go to my school, they do drugs and are gay. And if you go to SCAD, then they are all furries. Or if you go to USC, they do drugs and are gay. Well, what I'm going to say in general is that you're probably going to meet all sorts of people that you would never expect to major in game design. Like, the vast majority of the preconceived notion of a gamer, right, is like a big fat white guy in his mom's basement with a neck beard or whatever screaming at Fortnite. And there's only a few of those. There's only a few of those guys. Yeah, it's not the whole thing. Like, look, I'm a woman. What? A brown woman who likes video games? Oh my god. You should see me in a GameStop. No, I'm just kidding. I don't step in GameStops very often. But you're gonna meet way more different people than you might be thinking. I obviously can't speak for like rural, smaller game design programs at like your local town college, if that exists, like if they even have a game design program. I can't speak for that experience, but what I know of the major schools that have game design is you're going to meet such a diverse cast of people in terms of not just like racially or anything like that. It's also in terms of their taste in games, because obviously you're going to think that most people who are majoring in game design have a certain level of interest in games, but honestly I know even a few people who don't even play video games who are majoring in game design at my school. There's all sorts of different reasons why people are in the major, and they all have different opinions about the industry, about the games, about a lot of them like anime. Wow! And they all have different fetishes. Wow. But like if your niche interest in gaming is like, oh my gosh, I love European Truck Driving Simulator 2 and other simulation games like that, well, then you're probably going to meet other people who like that stuff too. You're probably going to meet a lot of people who like all sorts of stuff, like, oh, you're going to have the Mario nerds, or I should say like the Nintendo nerds, and you're going to have the people who are like, oh my gosh, I'm a CRPG fan. Or you're going to have the people who are like, I play a little bit of everything, but my favorite is visual novels or whatever. You're going to meet all sorts of different people with different opinions on games, and media in general. I'm gonna say our major is very media focused. A lot of memes. A lot of these people maybe didn't express themselves in ways that they would have liked to in their youth. So in college, they're expressing these self-discovery moments a little too publicly. But you never know what you're gonna get in game design. You can't go in and expect that everyone's gonna be your typical image of a gamer, because for one, like half of my friends, well, a little less than half of my friends in the major are women, which is more than you would expect for an industry that's like 10% women, which is on the slow rise, but we're still working at it. And there's all sorts of different everything, It's great. We love diversity. And everyone is gay and does drugs. So, look forward to that. And finally, if after all this, talking about all the horrible hours spent in the computer labs, rendering on Maya in high poly, despite the fact that the industry is low poly, kind of. Actually, the PlayStation 5 is kind of making that point moot at this point. Like, I don't know if you've seen the tech demos for Unreal. It's like, whoa, okay, let's calm down there, Chief. But or maybe even all the gays in the anime, and if you go to SCAD, the furries and stuff like that. If you don't mind any of that, or if some of that even interests you, you sick freak, then you might be wondering, well, that sounds great. How do I get into game design? Because let's be honest, more and more people every day are deciding that they want to dedicate their life to games, which is just, I'm sure, great for all the parents out there who, if you're like my parents, said, oh, I'm raising a doctor or lawyer, and then you say, psych, I like Fortnite too much. And then your parents go, oh, great. Well then, how do you get into the major? It's really hard, because even my school with a 78% average acceptance rate only had a 12% acceptance rate on the game major. And that's going to be true of a lot of schools where everybody wants to make games now. Oh, by the way, if you want to get into USC specifically, good luck, because everybody who goes to my school right now didn't get into USC. Did get into Santa Cruz though. Didn't even apply to SCAD. No furries on my watch. Everybody in my major got into my major with like a completely different set of skills and a completely different portfolio. And some people, like, okay, for example, I did not have a single piece of I had no coding in my portfolio. I didn't even submit a game in any form in my portfolio. It was all just fine art. That's it. But I know people who had no fine art and did all their coding projects and had some game projects that they made in high school. Like some people even had a game making class in their high school. And some people had written essays that they submitted. And some people had work in engine, in Unreal and stuff like that. So as long as you can demonstrate in general a portfolio that's got something to do with games, you're probably going to get into at least my mid to high level game program. I don't even know how my game program that I'm in stacks up nationally. We still don't know how we got in, some of us, and how some people didn't get in. I don't know. It's completely random. Honestly, college nowadays in the US is so random. But what I'm going to say is do your best. Do your best to make a portfolio that reflects your interests going into game design. And if that's not possible, if you don't have the capacity yet to make something that reflects what you would like to make in the industry, then just make something, god damn it, that you can make that is at all applicable to games. Like I said, I had no coding work. I had no anything related to the technical aspect of game building. I literally just drew pretty pictures, and my I guess the head of my program just went, wow, that looks really good. You're in. I also had like good grades, so maybe that's why, but some people didn't have that good of grades, but they had a nice portfolio. Just make it seem like you like video games or art, and I bet you'll get in somewhere. Probably not USC unless you're like top of your class and you have an outstanding portfolio, but maybe everywhere else. So good luck. Some other advice would be also keep in mind that it's okay to not like game design and to switch out of it. Our major is notorious for people switching out or dropping out or transferring because game design can be really hard and really not fun. The whole point of it is that you're trying to make stuff that is fun, right? But at the cost of basically like your mental health. So if you still are like, well, I'm gonna give it a try and it's the thing that I want to do the most right now, don't feel ashamed if it's not for you. Game design, especially the first year, can be really fun for discovering what you do want to do. And as soon as you find something that you like actually see passion in and actually seems right for you, don't be afraid to grab that. Go for that. Because it's not fun making video games most of the time. That's depressing, but it's true. So don't be ashamed if it's not for you. It's really not for everyone. And you're gonna do yourself a lot more favors finding what you do love rather than wasting your time doing what you don't love. And I'm saying that because I'm assuming everyone who's majoring in game design or has that desire to major in game design loves games. Or loves the craft of it, I guess. Ugh, I don't know. I honestly have no idea why people want to do this. I know nothing. But do what you love. God damn it. And if game design just so happens to fit for you, well, good luck, Charlie.